Today we're jiving deep into Green Angel Tower, which is the epic conclusion to Tad Williams's Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy.
hmm
We've got a lot to unpack here.
We do, yeah. Unnatural Winters, a rebellion that's hanging on by a thread, quest for legendary swords,
Right.
and the fate of Ostenard hanging in the balance. It's a lot.
It is. And what's fascinating is that Williams kind of masterfully intertwines all these elements. He doesn't just throw us into some big climactic battle. He really sets the stage carefully, creates this sense of urgency and doom, and it kind of permeates every page.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like this creeping frost that slowly envelops the land. And speaking of that frost, the unnatural winter that we see ravaging Ostenard, this is more than just like a backdrop, right?
Right.
It's a physical representation of the Storm King's growing power,
Hmm.
of the encroaching darkness. And it creates this sense of claustrophobia, this feeling that the world itself is closing in on our characters.
And within this very chilling landscape, we have Josua leading the rebellion's last stand at Siswadra. What makes this location so crucial?
Well, Siswadra, I mean, it's more than just a strategic stronghold. It's a symbol of hope, the last bastion of resistance against the Storm King's tyranny. If Siswadra falls, the light of Ostenard is extinguished.
Like the last candle flickering in the wind.
Exactly.
So the stakes couldn't be higher. And as if things weren't dire enough already, we've got Simon on his quest for those legendary swords, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. I mean, the names alone carry so much weight.
Oh, they do. And it's interesting how Williams uses these swords to explore those themes of history, memory, and the cyclical nature of conflict. They're not just weapons. They're artifacts that connect the present to the past. They remind us that the choices we make today, they echo through generations.
It's like they hold the weight of Osnard's history, literally within their hilts. But Simon's not the only one on a crucial mission, right? We also have Miriam Ele and Kadrak, and they're taking a completely different but equally risky approach.
Yeah, their infiltration of Elias's stronghold is a daring gambit.
Mm-hmm.
And it highlights a key theme that we see in the book, that courage can take many forms. It doesn't have to be, on the battlefield.
Right.
Miriam Ele, in her own way, is as much a warrior as Simon or Joshua.
It's that quiet strength, right? The courage to face your fears, but in a totally different arena.
Yeah.
So we've got these multiple threads: the rebellion, a quest for powerful artifacts, a daring infiltration, and then just when you think you've got a handle on all the players, Williams throws in the Scythic.
Talk about a game changer.
Right.
Remember, the Scythics have remained isolated for centuries, observing the affairs of men from a distance. So their decision to actually intervene, that speaks volumes about the gravity of the situation. This is a threat that transcends the petty squabbles of humankind.
It really makes you wonder what motivates these ancient, enigmatic beings. What do they see in the future of Oxenard that makes them break their silence?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most intriguing aspects of the book. Williams doesn't give us easy answers.
Right.
He leaves us to ponder, to think about their motivations, their goals, their role in this grand tapestry of events.
And all this while the Storm King's power just seems to be reaching a peak. It certainly makes sense to me now why the book is titled The Green Angel Tower. Right? It feels like everything is converging on this one location.
Well, yeah. And Green Angel Tower it's more than just a place. It's a nexus of power, a symbol of Ostenard's ancient history. It's a focal point for both the forces of light and darkness. The tower itself almost becomes a character in the story, a silent witness to this unfolding drama.
I'm already getting chills. And within this maelstrom of power, we have Pryrates, the Storm King's sinister priest.
Right.
He's more than just, your typical villain.
Yeah, Pryrates is fascinating because he's a study in ambition and manipulation and the seductive nature of power, He's not just some mindless servant of evil.
Right.
He's a master strategist, a cunning manipulator who uses dark magic to further his own goals.
So he's not just, this cackling villain throwing fireballs. He's a puppet master.
Exactly, pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
Yeah. And then there's Elias himself, the once noble prince, now completely consumed by the Storm King's influence. It's a classic, tragic fall from grace.
It is. And what's interesting about Elias is that he's not simply possessed by some kind of external force, right? He's seduced by it, corrupted by the promise of power and this allure of a world that's remade in his own image. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and how good intentions can slip into tyrannical rule.
It's a reminder that even the most well-intentioned individuals, they can be swayed by darkness, especially when it whispers promises of order and control. So we have all these elements kind of converging, right? This desperate fight for survival, the quest for the legendary weapons, the arrival of the Scythe looming over it all, Green Angel Tower. It feels like the stage is set for a confrontation unlike any other.
It is. And as we delve deeper into Green Angel Tower, we'll explore, the battle that unfolds, the sacrifices that are made, and ultimately the question of what price will be paid for victory and what becomes of Ostenard in the aftermath.
From the sounds of it, we're in for one intense ride. Buckle up, listeners, as we continue our deep dive into Tad Williams' epic conclusion to Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Ostenard. So, before the break, we were talking about all these converging storylines and the ominous shadow of Green Angel Tower, and I think it's time that we step onto the battlefield and see how these forces clash.
It's interesting. You're describing Green Angel Tower as being more than just a place. It makes me think of how Tolkien described Minas Morgul in Lord of the Rings, almost like this fortress that's a living entity, just radiating menace. Was Williams going for something similar here, do you think?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some parallels there. Both Green Angel Tower and Minas Morgul, they're steeped in history and myth, and they serve as, these focal points for the forces of darkness. But what sets Green Angel Tower apart is its connection to Ostenard's really ancient past, its roots in the time of the Scythe. It's a place where the veil between worlds is thin, where magic is woven into the very fabric of reality.
That's a really good point. It's not just about like a physical battle for control of this tower, right?
Yeah.
About something deeper, something more primal. And speaking of primal, let's talk about Pyrates. We know he plays a pivotal role in the battle. How does his magic manifest? What kind of threat does he actually pose to, the forces of good?
Well, Pyrate's magic it's unsettling, to say the least. It's not flashy, it's not grandiose, it's subtle, insidious. It's like this creeping poison. He manipulates shadows, he whispers doubts into the minds of his enemies. He twists the very fabric of reality to suit his purposes.
So it sounds like he's a master of psychological warfare,
Yeah.
as much as a wielder of dark magic, right? Preys on vulnerabilities, exploits fears, turns people against each other.
Exactly. And that's what makes him so dangerous, right? He understands that true power lies not just in brute force, but in the ability to control, perceptions, to sow discord and doubt.
He's not just a cackling villain throwing fireballs. He's a puppet master, pulling strings from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And while Pryrace is orchestrating chaos within the tower, we have Simon outside, desperately searching for these legendary swords. Does he find them? Do they live up to their mythical reputation?
Well, Simon's quest for the swords, I think it's as much a journey of self-discovery as it is a search for these powerful weapons. And yes, he does find them. But they're not what he expects. They're not gleaming artifacts radiating power. They're worn. They're almost humble in their appearance.
So the power lies not in their outward appearance, but their history.
Yeah.
Their symbolism.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. They represent memory, sorrow, and thorn. Three, very fundamental aspects of the human experience. They're not just tools of destruction. They're reminders of the past, the pain of loss, and the resilience of the human spirit.
I wonder if those themes, memory, sorrow, thorn, if they're reflected in the battle itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there a sense of past wrongs being avenged, of loss and sacrifice shaping the outcome, of resilience in the face of just, overwhelming odds?
Yeah, absolutely. The Battle of Green Angel Tower is a culmination of everything that has come before it, right? It's a reckoning with the past. Yeah. It's a confrontation with the forces that have brought Ostenard to the brink of destruction.
And in the midst of all this chaos, we have Elias, caught between his own ambitions and the influence of the Storm King. What becomes of him during the battle? Does he remain just a puppet of the darkness? Or is there some glimmer of redemption?
Well, that is the question that hangs over this entire battle, right? And we do see these glimpses of the man that Elias once was, this noble prince who genuinely wanted to, make Ostenard a better place. But those glimpses, they're fleeting. They're overshadowed by the darkness that has taken root inside him.
It's like watching a friend succumb to a terrible illness.
Yeah.
You see flashes of their former self, but the disease has fundamentally changed who they are.
Yeah. That's a really powerful analogy, and it speaks to the tragedy of Elias's fate. He's not just a villain. He's a victim, consumed by a force he doesn't fully understand.
And speaking of forces beyond our understanding, the Scythes are present at the battle. What role do they play in all this? Are they simply observers, or do they actually take sides?
Well, their involvement is one of the most intriguing aspects of this entire battle. They don't simply align themselves with one side or the other. They seem to be guided by, their own ancient wisdom, their own understanding of this delicate balance between light and
But they're
darkness.
not necessarily fighting for good or evil.
No.
They're fighting for balance,
Yeah.
for the preservation of Austin art itself.
Right.
It's like they're playing some cosmic chess game, moving pieces across the board to ensure the survival of the world.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They're playing the long game, thinking in terms of centuries, millennia, and their motivations, their ultimate goals, they remain shrouded in mystery.
So we have all these elements kind of colliding, right? The desperation of the rebellion, the cunning of Pryrates, the tragedy of Elias, the enigmatic presence of the Scythe. It's all playing out against this backdrop of Green Angel Tower. It's a whirlwind of action, emotion, and magic.
But amidst all this, what about Simon? He's found those legendary swords. How do they factor into the battle? Do they prove to be the decisive factor, the key to defeating the Storm King?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The swords, yeah, they are powerful, but their true power lies not in their, physical strength. It lies in their symbolic meaning. They represent the struggles and triumphs of, humanity, the enduring power of hope and resilience.
So it's not just about wielding a magic sword, it's about wielding the power of memory, sorrow, and thorn. Understanding the weight of history, the pain of loss, the importance of fighting for what you believe in. Exactly. And as the battle reaches its climax, we see how these themes play out in surprising and really profound ways. The swords become more than just weapons. They become symbols of hope, rallying points for those who refuse to give in to despair.
So it sounds like this battle is more than just a physical confrontation, right?
It is, yeah.
A clash of ideologies, a battle for the soul of Austin art itself. And as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'm eager to see how Williams resolves all this.
Well, the Battle of Green Angel Tower is a turning point in the story, a crucible from which Austenard will emerge transformed. But the question remains, what will that transformation look like? What will be the ultimate cost of victory?
Welcome back to our deep dive into Green Angel Tower. So we've explored the converging storylines, the escalating tension, and we've witnessed that just brutal clash at Green Angel Tower. But as of any good story, the battle is just one chapter. So what happens after the dust settles? How does Austenard begin to heal from this conflict?
Well, this is where Williams, he really shines as a writer. He doesn't just wrap everything up in a neat little bow. He really explores the aftermath, that long road to recovery, and the scars, that remain long after those wounds have closed.
So it's not a happily ever after ending. There's a sense of realism, acknowledging that even in victory, there's this profound sense of loss.
Exactly. There are sacrifices that are made both on the battlefield and in the hearts of our characters. And those sacrifices, they have a lasting impact, shaping the future of Austenard in some really unexpected ways.
It's interesting to think about the different kinds of sacrifices.
Yeah.
We have the obvious ones, the lives lost in battle,
Yeah.
but then there are those more subtle sacrifices, right? The
Yeah.
choices that characters make that just irrevocably alter their paths.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, think about Simon's journey. He sets out to find these legendary swords, thinking that they're going to be the key to victory, but along the way, he loses his innocence. He loses his sense of certainty. He realizes that true power, it comes at a cost. And wielding a sword doesn't automatically make you a hero.
Yeah, it's like he's forced to grow up,
Hmm.
to confront the darkness within himself and the world around him. And what about Mary Millie? She goes through a transformation of her own too, right?
Oh, she does. She starts out as this kind of sheltered princess, but through her experiences, at the Hayholt and during the battle, she discovers a strength that she never knew that she had. She learns to stand up for herself, to fight for what she believes in, even when it means defying those in power.
So both Simon and Mary Millie are changed by their experiences.
Hmm.
But what about Elias? We left him in a pretty dark place,
Hmm.
consumed by the Storm King's influence. Does he find any redemption?
Well, that's a complex question, and one that Williams handles with a lot of nuance and compassion. Elias, he's a tragic figure. He's a victim of his own ambition and the manipulations of the Storm King. And while his ultimate fate is well, I don't want to spoil it for our listeners.
Right.
I will say that Williams doesn't paint him as just a simple villain.
Hmm.
He shows us the human cost of Elias's choices, the pain, the regret that lies, beneath the surface.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even those who make terrible mistakes, they're still capable of feeling love and remorse and sorrow. And speaking of sorrow, what about the Scythi? We know they played a role in the battle. What happens to them afterwards? Do they remain in Ostenard or just retreat back into their own, realm?
Well, their involvement is one of the most fascinating and mysterious aspects of this book. I mean, they're like forces of nature, you
Hmm.
know. They're powerful, unpredictable, and ultimately unknowable. They step in when the balance is threatened. But, their motivations and their long-term goals, they remain shrouded in mystery.
It's like they're these guardians of Ostenard, you know, just watching over the land from a distance, intervening only when it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And that sense of mystery, it just adds to their mystique, doesn't it?
It does. It leaves us wondering about their history, their connection to the land, and their role in shaping Austenard's future. And that's one of the things I love about Williams's writing. He doesn't give us all the answers.
Right.
He leaves room for speculation, for us to fill in those gaps with our own imaginations.
Yeah. It's like he's inviting us to continue the story in our own minds, to
Yeah.
ponder the possibilities,
Yeah.
and imagine what might come next. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Green Angel Tower, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree. This book, I mean, it's more than just an epic fantasy adventure. It's a story about loss and sacrifice, about the enduring power of hope, and about the choices that we make that shape not only our own destinies, but the fate of the world around us.
It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it. And it prompts you to think about your own values, your own place in the world, and the legacy that you hope to leave behind. So, to all of our listeners out there, if you haven't experienced the world of Austenard, I highly recommend picking up To Green Angel Tower. It's a journey you won't soon forget.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. What does it truly mean to be a hero? And what sacrifices are we willing to make for the greater good? Until next time, keep diving deep.